Okay, so last time Ronnie spoke about storytelling more generally and how to convey like a story to a client, how to do the relationship side of storytelling, and kind of just making sure that we're giving over something that's useful and something that's easily digestible. Um, or Ronnie would say totally different stuff. I don't know. At least that's what I interpreted it as. But either way, that was one side of storytelling, but there's another side, which is kind of just even having that story in the first place. So you're in an account and there's just tons of things happening. You might like see some very high level things like we didn't spend any money, or conversions are way down, or our CPA skyrocketed, or like there's like some things that you may see, or you may even get like a called out on by the client about, and so like what the heck's happening, and they kind of expect us to have an answer to that, which is fair because that's kind of the next step of okay, what do we do about this? So what I want to cover today is looking at these metrics and kind of going using the metrics to tell the story of what's happening with the data. So for today's, I really focused mostly on things that you're going to see within Google Ads, but I guess based off of feedback, we'll see how it goes. And if we want, we can kind of continue with some other metrics if we're talking about things that are also like within YouTube or within Facebook, or things that are going to be, those are going to be a little bit different because then we're going to also be talking about engagement rates and views and whatnot, different types of metrics. And the other thing I tried very hard to do here is not talk about anything within Google Analytics. So we can keep that for a different time. This is just really within what's accessible within the Google Ads dashboard, and that includes the metrics from Google Analytics that are accessible there. But like without doing anything crazy and running different segments, like what stories can we tell? So the first is, what are our top level metrics? So I call these the goal metrics. These are the ones that you look at and you're like, something's wrong here. So it's impressions. Are impressions up? Are they down? Clicks, cost, conversions, conversion value, CPA, ROAS. I put in views, and for some reason it's the only one that's black. But that's actually one that I'm not going to cover today, but all the ones tell very well. So these are all of the metrics that you might have a goal towards, right? You might have a volume goal of showing a certain amount of impressions or showing just more impressions over time. You may have volume goals in terms of clicks, in terms of spend goals, conversions, conversion value, CPA, and ROAS goals. So these would all be like potential goals within your campaigns. The first goal is impressions. And for impressions, so, okay, fine. So now we see that there's a change in impressions, or impressions are not where I want them to be. So what do I look at to figure out why this is happening? So basically the format here is that's the goal metric, and then there's a diagnostic metric. So like the immediate next step of what I look at, and then kind of how do I complete my story? So all metrics, and basically we're just going to go through the goal metrics today. All of those have the same format. So for impressions, the first thing I'm going to look at when I see that my impressions are down or up, or pretty much just not where I want them to be, is search impression share. Because my search impression share, or at least for search campaigns, is going to tell me how many impressions, like what percentage of impressions that I was eligible for did I actually show for. So let's say impressions are down, and let's see, did something change with search impression share? And the two main things that I look at within search impression share, which is kind of just like further developing the story, is going to be in terms of search impression share lost due to budget or lost due to rank, right? So it could be lost because there's just not enough budget. And it's like, okay, now I diagnose the problem. I know what to look at. It's a budgetary issue. Or it could be it's lost due to rank. So what happened? Did something change within our rank? Are we less relevant with our ads? Did we change our CPA targets? And suddenly we can't show as many impressions because Google says that it can't do as good of a job. The second thing is there just seasonality change in impressions? And that's like, I would look at Google Trends, you could look at Keyword Planner, just be aware there are changes within impressions, and that happens both ways, right? So there's times where it's higher, there's times that it's less, and there's predictable ones, and there's ones that kind of just come out of nowhere because something completely external happens. That happens a lot in the air ticket account. So that's in the airline industry. And all of a sudden there's news about a specific airline and there's a crazy amount of impressions one day. And like the easiest thing to do is be like, okay, what does Google Trends say? Oh, there's probably, I don't know, someone did something stupid at some airline. It all makes sense now. Andrew.
Nahama, is there an exact science for search impression share loss due to rank of how it's calculated?
So what Google's doing is it's looking at the amount, it's just the percentage of sessions that you're, of impressions, I'm talking analytics suddenly, of impressions that you're eligible for that you didn't enter into, but you didn't enter into the auction. And the reason you didn't enter is essentially because the bid that Google put out was too small. So that's like the qualification. The bid was too low, so you didn't make it into the auction. Why was the bid too low? Because let's say you have a ROAS target, right? So based off of your ROAS target, the highest bid that Google thought you can have and still get your ROAS target. So basically it's saying based off of your predicted conversion rate is too low to enter that auction. So those are the impressions that don't show up because of rank. On top of this, and the other reason that Google Trends is here is because it's really not all inclusive. So search impression share, if you have 100% search impression share, does not mean that you have 100% of all available impressions. It's all that so it's kind of like a different sort of eligibility. It's all that Google is allowing you to show up for, and that kind of based off of a bunch of other things. But that's why it's also important to look at Google Trends so that you could say, okay, I have really high search impression share, but according to Keyword Planner or Google Trends, I also know that there's thousands and thousands of more impressions out there that I should be able to get. And then that's kind of thing of like, what's the problem with the quality of my ads, with the quality of my website, with my keywords? And that's kind of like going back to the basics and starting to try to restructure.
Okay, thank you. And then is there a point where I could, if I increase budget, the search impression or loss due to rank will actually decrease as well? Because we'll be able to enter more auctions, so the decrease in rank.
100%, yes. And Andrew, I think we've seen that in Grown Brilliance.
We have, oh yeah. Because sometimes when there's an impression share, it was 100% and capped out, and then when we raise budgets, there was actually a bigger dividend of some rank and some budget. And then when you max out on budget, there's still rank available and whatnot.
Yeah, and they're very closely connected, especially when you're using any automation. It makes it harder to understand because an increase in your budget can suddenly increase your impression share loss due to rank, because now you're on maximized conversions, and now suddenly you can get more conversions for your budget, so you're ranking higher. So they are like connected, but it's still helpful to say, okay, I'm losing 20% due to budget. I could probably just increase my budgets and be okay here, and then kind of looking at each of them separately. Brendan, did you want to say something?
I was gonna make a comment about quality score. I know we avoid that, but that can also influence.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into quality score a little bit. I tried to avoid it, but I didn't call it quality score, but it's literally quality score.
This is a random question and has nothing to do with this, and I just don't think I've gotten an answer to it previously. And this is for anybody involved in the call. Previously, you could set a portfolio bid strategy, which allowed you to set a max CPC on an automated campaign. I don't think you can do that. Is anybody else aware?
You could do it, but not for, it depends. So you could do it for target CPA, I think, but I think they took it away for a lot of other.
So it's only target CPA that you can do it?
It might only be target CPA now. It's possible to more. I don't remember.
Because it's definitely not on max conversions. That's,
no, so max
and I know it used to be.
Yeah, max conversions they took it away for. I'm not sure about target ROAS. That's the only one I'm iffy on. But yeah, the max conversions, conversion value, you can't.
Cool. All right.
Okay, so that's impressions, which is kind of the simplest one. Next, we have clicks. So what are clicks made up of? There's really two ways to calculate your clicks, right? So you can either take your impressions and multiply that by your click-through rate, and that's how many clicks you have. So if you had 100 impressions, you had a 10% click-through rate, then you end up with 10 clicks. Or you could take your average CPC and multiply that by your cost. So you spent $5 and you had an average CPC of $1, then you know that you got 5 clicks. So these are the metrics that are like the determining metrics. I guess that's kind of what I mean when I say diagnostic metrics. And in order to look at them, we would say, okay, what is CPC made up of? What is average CPC made up of? What influences that? Because you might see, okay, there's an increase in clicks and it does check out that there was a decrease in CPC, for example, but why did that happen? So the next thing is to look at your top of page rate. So are you showing on the top of the page less often or more often? Because that's going to influence your CPCs. It's generally more expensive to show up higher on the page than lower. Also, to Brendan's point, quality score is still sort of a thing, and your ad relevance does influence the your overall CPCs and your overall account. So looking at it and saying, you know, something's crazy with my CPCs, let's just look at the ads and say, are they even relevant? And then in addition to that, I would say there's ad quality. So by ad quality, I mean, like, are there extensions? Is your copy good? Because if you have a higher click-through rate, then you technically have a little bit of a better quality score, which decreases your CPCs. Also, look at the Auction Insights report. So within the Auction Insights, we see what's happening with the competitors. If there's more competitors in the market, then I would expect the CPCs to go up. If they became more aggressive, then I would also expect the CPCs to go up. If somebody goes away, then I expect the opposite, right? So when in the beginning of COVID, when Amazon completely went out of all shopping, all of a sudden the CPCs in most of the accounts just dropped dramatically for e-commerce accounts because there was a big change in the market. The last thing I put here is in terms of hitting ROAS and CPA goals. So if you're hitting your ROAS goals, then Google can say, okay, now I have the ability to spend more per click and kind of try new things. And then you might see a rise in CPCs. The opposite is also true. So if you're not hitting your goals, then Google might feel the need to kind of pull back, and you might see your CPCs drop because it's going to test less things at that point. So that's the first one. It's made up of CPC and cost. Cost is not filled out, and I think it's italicized. I can't really tell. But either way, the ones that are not filled out are because they're referenced in another slide. So we have another slide where the goal metric is cost. We already spoke about impressions, so we'll get there. The second thing that makes up clicks is impressions times your click-through rate. So what influences click-through rate? So we have really a lot of the same things as CPC, but some of the things that we put here are the percentage of new sessions. So that's an analytics metric that's available within Google Ads. And typically, you're going to get a better click-through rate on returning users. Depends on the account, but it's just for a generalization. Then on new users. So do you have a shift in new versus returning users? That's something that can influence your click-through rate. Also, your ad relevance. That's directly correlated with click-through rate, as well as your ad quality that we spoke about before, and your top of page rate that we spoke about before. I would also add Auction Insights, which I don't know why I didn't put here, similar to what we spoke about before. So a lot of these things are the same that influence clicks, and then obviously your cost. If you're spending more, you'd expect more. The same thing with impressions. Does anyone have any questions, or should we continue? Okay. So the next metric we have here is cost. And cost is made up of your CPC, clicks, and CPC and clicks, right? So your CPC is times your clicks is your cost. And I put the CPC stuff here again. It's just a duplicate of the previous slide, so we won't go through it. Clicks, we also spoke about. Another thing that influences your cost is your impressions. Are you just showing more more impressions. And then the last thing I put here is, are you hitting your daily budget? And I put a custom column. It's really just cost divided by daily budget in accounts. And basically, what it tells you is it takes your total cost, so the total cost spend for that period, whatever period you're looking at, and divides it by your daily budget. And let's say you're looking at 7 days. If you're spending exactly your daily budget, then the number should be 7. If you're spending more than your daily budget, then your number should be 7 point whatever, something higher than 7. If you're not hitting your daily budget, the number is going to be less than 7. So that's just a metric that I look at to just see, like, are we spending the budget that we're allocating? And obviously, the further away from 7 it is, like if it's like a 1, then you're really not hitting your daily budgets at all. If it's like a 6.9, it's like, okay, whatever. But when we're looking at cost, it's important to say, okay, are we even hitting our budgets? Because if we're hitting our budgets, then, okay, the way that we can spend more or less is really just by changing our budgets. If we're not hitting our budgets, then the next thing we would look at there is, are we hitting our ROAS or CPA goals? So our cost could also be constrained by our ROAS or CPA goals, the goals in these specific campaigns where Google's saying, like, I can't hit this. Or you might see an increase in spend because all of a sudden your conversion rates went up and Google thinks it can hit your ROAS goals, for example, and then you would have that increase. Okay, so next metric is conversions. So conversions is made up of CPC, conversion. What influences conversions is your CPC and your conversion rate. So CPC times conversion rate is your clicks times conversion rate is your conversions, right? And clicks, we already said, is made up of CPC and spend. So your CPC, and we kind of spoke about that side, but times your conversion rate, that's what gives you conversions. And then impressions are also going to influence conversions. If we're showing more often, we would expect more conversions. But the metric I want to focus on here is conversion rate. So when we see an increase or a decrease in conversion rate, what do we do? What does that actually mean? So I don't think this is a completely exhaustive list. And if anyone has any other ideas, that would be great also. But the things that I look at within Google Ads are, first of all, the ad quality. So is my conversion rate bad or good? Pretty much, is it different? Is there any change, or is it hitting above or below my goals? Because there's something with the ad quality. So in general, the ads don't influence the conversion rate. It influences your click-through rate. Then you get to the person to the site, and then you deal with conversion rate. But your ads can also act as a filter. So one of the examples I like is also within the Airticket account, because that's clearly the only account I work on. We added an image extensions with really just like stock imagery of people answering phones. And what it did was it decreased our our click-through rate, but increased our conversion rate. And the reason for that is that people were clicking on our ads, not realizing that we were a call center. But when we kind of gave them that information, we were getting more qualified people clicking on our ads, which thereby influences conversion rate. The next thing I look at as diagnosing what happened with conversion rate is bounce rate. Are people bouncing right away? Are they not even showing any interest? Pages per session. So are they going through the site, or are they kind of dropping off right in the beginning? The same thing would be true of average session duration. Also, the percentage of new sessions, because new versus returning users has a big impact on conversion rate. And that's something we always want to keep in mind. So what's the ratio between our prospecting or remarketing and our new versus returning users on the site? And then especially if you have a sale, then that's a time where you expect a higher ratio returning to new. But then when the sale's over, you kind of expect that to start flipping again. And with that, your conversion rate probably decreases. Also, your top of page rate. So if you're showing higher on the page, you also have a good chance of getting users who are more interested. Not always true, but it's something to look at. And then your auction insight. So what are the competitors doing? Are they more aggressive? If there's more competitors that are kind of letting themselves be known in general, then that can influence conversion rate as well. Okay. So then the next thing here is conversion value. So conversion value is really just conversions times your value per conversion or your average order value. We already spoke about conversions. So the value per conversion, what do we look at for that? So especially within shopping campaigns, we look at the products that are sold. Are we starting to sell different products? And kind of bringing this back to the beginning for a second, we're seeing, let's say that our conversion value increases. So we're looking at, okay, did conversions increase? And maybe it didn't, or maybe it didn't at the same rate that conversion value increased. And obviously everything works the same way if it decreased. Then we're looking at value per conversion. Did our average order value increase or decrease? Because that also has an impact on our conversion value. This is something we see a lot for accounts with, I guess it's really important for accounts with high variances in pricing. So something like Roam Brilliance, which has product sales that come in every now and then for $20,000, and then other ones that come in for $1,000. Our AOV makes a huge difference to what our conversion value will be at any given time. And that's usually because specific products are selling that are higher value than others. So the first thing we look at is the products that were actually sold. And second thing is if there's a promotion, you expect a lower value per conversion. Not always, but it's something to look at. Also, demographics. Did the age or any other demographics that Google gives us switch? Because it can be tied to older people buying more or people with higher income buying more or less, or et cetera. And then the last thing here is our ROAS targets again. So if our ROAS targets, if we're hitting them, then, well, I guess not just if we're hitting them. If Google feels a need to hit our ROAS targets, right, which it does when we give it to them, then it's often easier, not always, it depends on conversion rate, but oftentimes it's easier for Google to go after a really high value purchase rather than a lower one. So we want to get that $20,000 sale because that's going to cover that campaign for a while, whereas the $1,000 sales are just less appealing. That depends on the individual conversion rates for each. But if you have a change in ROAS targets, I would look at, I guess this works both ways. I would look at the AOV and see, is there a difference there? Okay, and then CPA and ROAS, which are the two things that we're typically most, I think, judged on, or that we have actual specific goals for. So CPA is made up of conversion rate and CPC, which we spoke about already, and ROAS is made of conversion rate, CPC, and value per conversion, which we spoke about already. I know in the past I've kind of tried to convey that CPA is conversion rate and CPC. That's really the essence of what it comes down to. Kind of like forgetting about all the other things, and then we spoke about what to look at for conversion rate and for CPC. But I know it seems to be like a hard thing to grasp, because when we say CPA, it's like cost per conversion. At no point do we say conversion rate and CPC. And when we say ROAS, we're like conversion value over cost. We're not saying conversion rate, CPC, and value per conversion. So over here, I just put the formulas and just kind of show what's happening. So we have a CPA, which is cost per conversion. And cost, like we said before, is made up of clicks and CPCs. Conversions are made up of clicks and conversion rate. So kind of like high school algebra, if we cross out the clicks, we're left with CPC divided by conversion rate. ROAS is conversion value over cost, which translates to conversions times the value per conversion divided by the clicks times the CPC. And again, if we kind of just cross out the clicks, then we're left with the conversion rate times the AOV over the CPC, except there's no over sign there. And that's kind of just like what we're thinking of. So when we're thinking of anything conversion focused, always looking at CPC and conversion rate and like right away, because those are the building blocks of each of those things. And then as you saw once we're looking at, okay, what changed in conversion rate, then that leads us to other metrics. But the first metric that I look at the first ones are CPC conversion rate and then AOV. So that's really it for now. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, so I think we're good then.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you ever make decisions or optimization decisions or incorporate into your storytelling revenue per visitor or revenue per impression? Do you find that there's either specific use cases or types of clients or types of scenarios in a relationship that matters? Let's say more so over, let's say, regular return on ad spend or average conversion value. Do you incorporate that at all into like decision making?
I don't usually. I'd say that the exception would be something like Comics Kingdom, where they're actually monetizing based off of users because they're monetizing their website based off of their own ad spend. But I think, and I don't know, I'm curious like when you would use that, because to me, that puts equal value on all users when the whole point of optimizing accounts is to put different value on different users. So I don't know like when I would use it, but I'm curious what brought that
up. Because I think there's something to it that I think collectively we haven't really dug much into over the years. See, you're right. In the ideal world, like optimizing accounts is supposed to put, or you're aiming to put as much individual value per conversion or per user as possible. But then if you're making decisions around an ad group, you're making decisions around whatever level of the hierarchy you're analyzing, you're looking at some sort of average, or you're looking at like cost per conversion, or average revenue per conversion. So it's like, okay, we want to get more conversions. But wouldn't there be some type of account where maybe the volume is high enough, or there's a certain homogeneity of the clicks and impressions, and there's enough of them, where if you could look at revenue per impression, revenue per click, it's like, okay, well, let's try to get more clicks or try to get more impressions. And maybe there's more volume there where you could maybe, like, meaning, I don't know, maybe there are certain situations where you could make decisions that are valid decisions to make, or you might not have enough data to make those decisions based on conversion revenue or conversion volume.
Right, but if you don't have enough data on conversion volume, then why do you have enough data on this? It's like there's more people, but there's not more conversions.
So I don't know the statistics there.
I don't know. Maybe Brendan has a better answer.
I mean, I'm sure other people are a big proponent of this, but if you're lacking conversion volume in the account, I'm setting micro conversions and optimizing for those like pretty consistently. Like especially in a competitive market where there's a lot of search volume, I found that lowering CPCs usually helps, but then you have to provide your account with actual conversion volume and data. So I add an add to cart event as an optimization. Like typically that's not clean data, but like at least you're optimizing for a higher quality user. I don't think that really answers your question, but
right. Like, no, that's a good strategy. It's also a good strategy. I think there's also something interesting in reporting where
I think projections is very helpful.
Right. Reporting projections, like putting myself in a client's shoes. It's if I could be shown that, yeah, it's like, okay, everyone who searches for Southwest customer support, they're all different people, and they all have different predicted conversion rates, and they all have different conversion rates. But over the last 10,000 or 10,000 searches for Airline Plus customer support, we know we're earning $1.50 in revenue per click. So our goal is to get just more clicks. I'm trying to see. I don't know if that's practically different.
I think what you're trying to say, Isaac, to a certain degree, it actually might be more physically relevant for making decisions based on how much each impression or click has to do with profit of what it means to the actual client. We're trying to say, okay, besides for the Southwest people that are their CPCs are ranging, their conversion rate are ranging, but based on what is the average of each impression, each click bring bottom line revenue and really profit more? The amount of spend, this is calculating different various of costing for the different types of users as well. Minus, obviously, how much the amount of revenue we're gaining from it.
I think if like you were to look at this, it would have to be an account with a lot of conversion data, but then you can look at other metrics would probably prove out the same point. Because like if you were to take an account and you were to say, hey, we got 10,000 impressions and we got 10,000 impressions month over month, we're using an automated bid strategy with broad match types. Our conversion value over cost would also be going up at the same time with your value per impression.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's the same thing, because you're just going directly to the calculation instead of saying, what's our CPA? Our CPA is made up of our CPCs and our conversion rates, but we could also say what's our CPCs made up of, and they're made up of our clicks and our cost, right? And what our clicks made up of, our clicks are made up of impressions and click-through rate. So impressions are part of that. So you can you're just rewriting the formula a different way, which may or may not be, I don't know, like from a decision-making standpoint that it makes a difference, but it may be that clients
I think on a separate platform, this makes a lot of sense though. Like for Facebook, I think that the value per impression and the value per click would make more sense than something like Google, because you're not basing this off of search intent, and you're not like CPCs, like you're not getting a bunch of detail into why CPCs are at what they're at. So it's like, hey, we changed our audience targeting, our CPCs dropped, and now the value per click that you're getting in from a customer is rising.
Yeah, I like using revenue per click on single web. It gives me somewhat more accurate data on how campaigns are working. Like if I see a rise in revenue per click during the day, I know that the campaign that I started earlier that day or the day before is working. Even though on Facebook I might not get that data because of all of the issues that Facebook has.
And don't you use some custom columns in Facebook for like unique clicks divided by revenue divided by unique clicks?
Yeah, like that's what Lucian's kind of discussing. I also use another metric that I think everybody should start to use, which is outbound clicks divided by landing page views. But that's a separate conversation. But those two metrics are like two metrics that I think
Outbound
are really
clicks off a site.
Yeah, outbound clicks off of site, which is
Off Facebook.
Facebook.
No,
Outbound clicks off Facebook.
What?
You're talking about clicks to the site, no?
It's outbound clicks, which is by Facebook's definition, any click that takes you off of Facebook's platform. So if you're running a conversions campaign, hypothetically speaking, it should take you. I don't know where else it would take you off of Facebook other than to the site. But like,
So what is that really trying to show you? Like how often like the page loads or like spam clicks?
So, I mean, I look at it for two things, and what that describes to me.
I mean, you want that to be one, right? You want the
You want it to be as close to one as possible, because hypothetically speaking, unless it was an accidental click, like that user should land on the web page. But
that's like the problem of looking at like Google Ads clicks and Google Analytics visitors.
Yeah, so that's why what I look at that for is I want that percentage to be as high as possible, or something is happening either with conversion tracking, that something's off there, or that your mobile site speed is so slow that the user's not getting to site. So like I would try to troubleshoot from that point on, because I've seen a lot of issues recently with that metric specifically in Facebook accounts.
That's good. That's very good.
So it can be used as a bounce rate.
Yeah.
Like if you see a very low landing page to outbound clicks rate, that's a high bounce rate, because a lot of people enter the site but don't wait for it to load. But it can also be a way to see if an audience is relevant. So if the audience you're targeting is not very relevant, they'll enter and then get out. Compared to one that is a lot more relevant, they'll stay longer, so the rate will be high.
I guess going back though to the original point, which is like using value per click, the reason that makes sense to do that in Facebook is, again, for the quality of the audience. I do think there's a situation in Facebook where you have a premium auction based off of the audience type. Like people, like we always talk about landing page views being so high, and they've been rising recently. I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing as long as your value per click is actually increasing. Like sometimes I think there is a premium auction with Facebook audiences that are likely to convert where they're charging you more based off the audience type. So that's going into your original point. It's like, hey, our cost per landing page view is up $1, but the clicks that we're getting have more value than they did previously.
Okay, so yeah, so this is really mostly focused on Google. I mean, they're metrics, so they apply to different platforms, but I think we're missing some of the metrics that would be useful in a for Facebook or YouTube or anything social. And we're also missing any like analytics metrics. If you think that's helpful, then we could do something on that. Otherwise, we definitely don't have to. Okay, so I told Avery 30 minutes and we're at 40, so we're going to close this out.
Great job, Nakama. This was phenomenal.
Thanks.
Thank you.